The reason I got into the Model A's was my dad had several of them, 3 of them, two-door sedans. And when I was growing up, Dad wanted something to pick up the corn in each row. He hooked a trailer to one of the old Model A's. He drug it out of the garage, out of the barn actually, and got it running. And it had no glass in it except the gas gauge. All the glass was busted out, headlights, everything. And so we would shuck the corn by hand with the wristbands. We'd go down the row, shuck the husks off, throw them in the little two-wheel trailer behind the Model A. And then we got to the end of the row, I'd always get to move the Model A, turn around, go to the next row. And so I fell in love with it. I told him, I said, I want that car. And he says, what are you gonna do with it? I said, well, I'm gonna fix it up and drive it. And well, here I am, a 9th grader, pretty young. Got the car, tore it all apart, pulled the motor out, went through the whole thing, and I got the body all cleaned up, and I managed to get it all running again, put it all back together, just primer. And the seat springs, there was no cushions on them, so I had some gunny sacks and just pulled gunny sacks over the seat springs and drove it for 3 years. It was the only car I had, and I always was trying to make it go a little faster. So I had some books I was reading about speed parts, and overhead valves increased that motor from 40 horse to say 85 horse, and I decided that I wanted one of those. So I set out thinking, well, why can't I make these? And bought a Bridgeport mill from a guy that started a business in his garage and it didn't work out, and an old lathe. Took me about a year, and I got it running. I full pressured it, drilled the crank, and it went, actually went so fast you couldn't handle it because the suspension wasn't very good. So in 1976, I bought some land and we put a building up. So we lived in that for 8 years, and the boys came along, just 1 bedroom, all packed in that 1 bedroom, bunk beds for the boys, and they grew up in the shop, right in the chips and the mess. And so by 1978, I had quit my job at KW Muth Company, and I started doing machining and welding and fabricating in that shop, and it grew a little bit each year. We actually expanded 8,000 square feet and started hiring guys, and I think I had a dozen guys at that point. Because of the Model A stuff, all the while I was always working on something, and I started looking at the cam situation and needed a cam ground. So I went to a fellow in Milwaukee. It was Exonia Milwaukee. He had a cam grinder, and I had him grind a cam for me. And when I came to pick it up, he said, I'm selling the business. He said, you need to buy this. And it was Ash Cams. Kind of made me an offer I couldn't refuse, so I ended up with the cam grinding business, and we started making cams and then all kinds of parts for the Model A, NB engines, and Model T. And then when the Ford 100 came along, they heard that I was making cams, and they needed, they were going to make 100 Model Ts, 1914s, and they needed cams for them. That's how we started making the Model T cams, and then the A cams just kept growing. People heard we were making performance stuff. The cams that we make, we're the only manufacturers for Model A cams, and they ship all over Australia, Germany, New Zealand, and all over the United States, of course. Tony came to me, I want to sell the business, I want to retire, and Tony came to me and said, I want to buy it. Pretty soon my younger son, Dieter, he called me up and said, Dad, Tony and I want to buy the business. He said, if you're going to come on board, then the two of you can kind of cover for each other. Both the boys are extremely handy and very creative, so, which I'm proud of that. I think growing up in the shop, right under my feet, they've got the experience, and I'm glad to get out of here, and I think they'll really continue that name and tradition on.
I want to expand it into other vintage. I don't want to get too new of cars, just mostly Fords probably. I'm a Ford guy. I want to expand it into the flathead V8s next, because there's people calling for parts here.
Dad had so many ideas and things that he wanted to do with the business that he didn't have time to develop yet, so there's all those ideas to expand on, plus all our own ideas that we can develop, and with all the equipment and technology that's available for us, the sky's the limit pretty much on what we can do.
I'm going to warmer weather.
We're gonna go.
So, yeah.